Hello everyone. I'm Trent Blizzard, and I am here with Kristen Blizzard, and we are the founders of GeoForager and Modern Forager. And today's webinar, the topic is really a 2026 overview. My goal is to kind of look at the big picture for the whole season, where we are in the season, what we have coming up, look at some specific fires, and answer a lot of questions, share some theories, and then answer anyone's questions. I'm not going to run through like all the specifics of like how to burn hunt for beginners or anything like that, or what are the species you find and all the kind of slides I do. Instead, I want to spend the time in the maps here and really look at it that way. Now we do have a couple more webinars coming up if you're looking for some more. I think we have one next week through NAMA on mapping and habitats and how to use maps to find mushrooms. We have another one coming up in 2 weeks that I'm doing, and that's only for our subscribers. And we're gonna kind of dig in a little deeper into the maps on that one, just for our subscribers. And then we're gonna repeat a few after that. Now, I'll talk about some future webinars too in a minute. I will be doing one for beginners as well. Um, I saw the news today. I don't know if you guys have been noting in the news, there's been a flurry of news articles in CNN and The Guardian, um, uh, and websites like that about the rapidly diminishing snowpack, and they're showing before and after pictures of what it looked like on, say, February 1st versus March 1st versus April 1st, and reporting that in the West, it's kind of a record. We had a pretty bad snowpack this year in a lot of places, and then we've had record heat, and the long and short of it is the snowpack is disappearing quickly across the West, much more quickly than usual. It feels like it might be, 3 or 4 weeks ahead of schedule in terms of when and where the snowpack is kind of disappearing. Yeah, ski resorts, they open late, they're closing early, they got a lot of rocks. It's kind of ugly. Lana, excuse me, the invite for the members only webinar should go out tonight. So watch for that. I think I have it set to go out later tonight. So that will go to you. Now, I think that kind of snowpack information or bad news is kind of driving the Morel news cycle now. And I think a lot of Morel hunters are pretty alarmed at where we're at. I'm going to share my screen here, and they're pretty alarmed. And I don't know if that's really where we need to be quite yet. Let's see how that works. You guys should be able to see my screen now. And I have the West open here, and the goal today, I wanna do a little intro, which we're working through now. I want to talk about some of my morale theories. I want to do a big picture look at the whole West, from kind of like 10,000 feet, and then I want to go in and look kind of at a few different states and talk about what's going on there. And hopefully we'll be done in, under an hour. I'm not trying to like put in a whole bunch of information in here. If you want to learn like all the crazy reports that are available in GeoForger, you can watch the webinar we did last week. It's been recorded. It's on the site. You can go sign up and watch a recorded version. I dug into real deep into a lot of these different layers and how you use them to find mushrooms. Matt is asking like went right to the big question, Matt. Like asked, what is the relationship between the snowpack and the morel season? I think that's a great question, and I wanna talk about it. Um, yeah, the word bleak has been used, aridification has been used. Uh, uh, I'm gonna say like big picture. I feel like anytime you're looking at weather and information in the news, I do feel it's like very sensationalized. I think the news channels, whether it's tornadoes or rainstorms, are always coming up with new names for the really bad weather events that never seem to be quite as bad as they advertise. Not always, but I do feel like the news sensationalizes a lot of this and blows it out of proportion because they're trying to get clicks. So I always feel like they should lower it down like 30%, how they're talking about it. Um, um, out there. And um, let's see. So let me talk about my morel theory, which we'll kind of I'll work snowpack into that. Um, uh, I think that burn morels, um, I think they live with in the forest, in the ground all the time for 100 years before there's a fire. Now, we don't know that. Maybe there's a lot of spores in there that actually, what do spores do? They don't erupt, they don't grow, they fruit, they I don't know what the right word is, but they become mycelium and turn into mushrooms eventually. Maybe it's just spores in the forest floor that are excited by the fire. But the bird morels, I think they're in the forest all the time, and they're interesting because if you go and like chop down a forest with a chainsaw, cut down a forest with a chainsaw, you won't see many burn morels. But if you burn down a forest with fire, you'll see burn morels. If you go through a forest and give it a light burn, even where the burn runs through the forest but doesn't kill all the trees, you'll definitely see burn morels. But if you go through that same forest, I think with a bunch of loppers and clippers and clip all the trees down and kill some with chainsaws, you don't see them. So there's something special about a fire beyond just stressing out the trees. I don't know if it's a temperature thing. I don't know if it's a chemical thing, but something is going on that really causes these particular species of morels to fruit, and they don't fruit otherwise typically. I mean, you might find a random one here and there, rarely. Um, but it is the fire that sets them off. And I think that the burns happen in the fall. They tend to be late this year. The snow happens, and the morel once the snowpack goes away, I think that mycelium takes a couple of weeks and forms what are called sclerotia, little things under the ground. Maybe they look like little potatoes or something, maybe as big as acorns, and those sclerotia. Yeah, and by the way, I see some spores germinate. Thank you, John. That was the verb I was looking for. I got some theories coming in here. Maybe it's the alkalinity. Who knows? Um, but they have this phase where they form these sclerotia, and then the sclerotia then fruit the mushrooms. And I think there's this two-phase process, and it needs the right weather conditions or the right soil conditions to get through those two phases. And what I see is while there's snow on the ground, like nothing's happening, it doesn't matter. As soon as the snow melts, I feel like the clock starts ticking. And if the soil stays at the right moisture levels over the next 6 to 8 weeks, though that's the time frame it takes for those sclerotia to do their job and fruit morels. And that we really care about the weather because um, if the soil dries up too much in those 6 to 8 or even longer weeks, the game is over. The gig is up. Very much like you plant a vegetable in your garden or a vegetable seed. Like if you give it just a little bit of water, enough water for these vegetables in your garden, they will continue to grow. They won't die. Now they may not thrive. You may not have the biggest tomato plants in the world if you don't water them enough. But if you let it dry out, like it's done, it dies and it never comes back. And I think that with the morels, if they go through an extended dry period, let's say after snowpack 4 weeks, and let's say anytime after that, 2 to 3 weeks or 4 weeks, 2 weeks maybe of dryness, I think it's over. I don't think you're going to see the really morels popping. Now, as an aside, we talk about microclimates where people find them in talk all about microclimates. That's just another way of saying it's so dry they're hard to find. So you got to go find the very little small wet spots where they might still be alive. So microclimates is kind of code word for you. You know, it's not a good year. You got to go look for them in tiny little areas. So when it comes back to snowpack, I'm coming back full circle here. I do think a lot of snow helps. When there's a lot of snow and good snowpack, there's a lot of water melting, and that mitigates that dry problem and kind of buffers the ground for a longer period of time. When we have a snow melt now, earlier in the season, in my opinion, I'm not too worried about it as long as we get some moisture at the right intervals during that time period so that the ground doesn't get too dry and kind of and the morel season in that particular spot. So yeah, I do think big snowpack helps. It buffers. It really is like uh, uh, a handicap kind of situation where if they get that snow, they have improved odds of fruiting. But just because we don't have snow now, I'm not too worried until as we watch the season progress and we don't see rain. So right now, it's neat to look at and see where we're at, but. I think and then like a month from now, if we do the same analysis and look at how much rain we got across the West in the last 30 days, we'll be able to tell which areas are still likely to fruit. I also think that when there's snow on the ground right now, where there is snow, like the clock hasn't started ticking. So until the snow melts, then is when the clock starts kind of ticking, in my opinion. Now, it's a theory. I think other people may disagree with me, and I would welcome you to, disagree in here in the chat. Um, so just looking at the notes here. Now, I don't know how many of you got rain where you are. It poured here today, and there was a lot of rain across big parts of the West. So that bodes well in my mind. Boom, that resets the clock in these places, and now we can kind of go another 2 weeks before the next rain. I've had my best picks in places that seem to get, kind of regular rain and they never fully dry out. So based on that, I do think we live in the kind of a time of opportunity right now. We have a lot of good hunting ahead of us. And we need to watch the weather and kind of pick where that time will be. Um, now, the other thing about the burn morels are I think they like warmer soil temps than a lot of the natural morels. So they fruit a little later in the season. So everybody's got morel mania right now. They're out, trying to find the naturals, whether you're in Missouri or Oregon or California. People are hitting the woods and, picking those natural morels, which I think fruit at a much um, earlier in the season at a lower soil temperature. And the burn morels, on the other hand, are going to be the last ones to fruit. And then even within the world of burn morels, we have several species, and ones like tomentosa or exuberance can fruit really late in the season and really want warm soil. So you're talking about finding those, well into August at higher elevations, because they like that warm soil. Um, yeah, Sherman Laurel notes that slash burn piles and clear cuts in low elevations in Western Oregon were fruiting this week, but drying out quickly. I think this rain today is going to keep all these naturals going. I think they're going to be happy. We've had enough rain. From what I've seen around, the ground is pretty wet still in most places. Wet enough for morels. I mean, I haven't been all over the whole West to be able to claim that, but a lot of these logging morels. Well, let's talk about that. Another type of man-made morel is going to be a logging morel, Morchella snyderi here in the West, which just loves to come out of logging areas. I have a hunch those slash burn piles and clear cuts. I have a hunch you're finding the snyderi, not the proper quote unquote burn morels. I could be wrong. They're hard to tell if you don't have like a DNA sequencing background. But those snyderi fruit before the burn morels do. So a lot of hunters right now, like in Oregon, we're out getting ready to go into logging areas for the next couple of weeks, and they've already started. And chase the kind of log morels. And if you're interested in here in doing that, I do have logging maps, and I have what do we have in Geoforge? We have 6 years of logging maps. I do think the first 2 years, especially, can be pretty productive. Then you can zoom in here. I'll turn them on, and you can find these zones. And I think that if you're really after morels right now, it's fun to go look in burns, but realistically, the loggers are in their season right now, and it's a little bit early for morels. I mean, it's only April 1st, and we usually don't really get too serious about burn morels for the places we hunt until like closer to Memorial Day, kind of late May, early June. So we still have a lot of time ahead of us, even if it is an early season. Um, let's see. Let's see. We've got a couple questions. Lana says, When is it the right part of the You're curious about the timing, when to check a 2,000 foot elevation burn area near Oak Ridge. Yeah, let's talk about that when we get there. Um, but I imagine, now snowpack. Let's come back to snowpack and my theories. I think burn morels love snowpack. I think they like cold weather a lot. I feel like they really are the most reliable when they're in a place that holds snow in the winter. And that's because I think they like the cold. Now, you can certainly find them over here in the coast on can you guys see my cursor as I move around? You can find them on the west side over here of the um, kind of Central Valley here. It's not called Central Valley of the Willamette Valley in Oregon. And you can find them on the western side of the Cascades where it warms up. They get a lot of rain in there. It feels kind of coastal. A lot of these places don't get much snow. Now you can find morels and people do and burns, but my experience is they're very hard to predict. They're not as reliable. If you go east 100 200 miles, like they're going to happen. If the weather goes off, the weather, if it rains, the morels are going to go off. Like you can count on it. But in the coastal areas, when we hit the areas that like in late March and April that you think would have morels because the soil temps are right, you may find some and you may not. I usually feel like it's a may not situation. I usually when I go, it's just because I'm desperate to go burn morel hunting, not because I expect to come home with buckets. So right now it's still pretty early. Now, we'll try to kind of hone in on some of the timing issues, Lana, as we dig a little deeper. So I talked about logging morels, a different species. I think they pop up earlier. And then we also have second and third year burns are worth going to, and we have those. I'll turn off the logs here, and in our maps here we have wildfires, and you can turn on, 2025 wildfires, which are what we hunt this year. But you could also check out the 2024 wildfires if you want to. Um, it's not the worst idea to go into a second year burn. People rarely do. And I think as you go from a second to a third and even a fourth, the burn morels phase out. But I do think those Mochella Snyderi can come back and do pretty well in some of these western forests. And people have sometimes do really well in second and third year burns. Um, I know a fella who claims that he hunts them exclusively. He loves having the burn to himself. He's like, no one's ever in a second year burn. I have it to myself. It's not competitive, and I do just fine. And this is for a pretty savvy guy that said this. So I would encourage you to visit second, and even third year burns if you get an opportunity. It can be worth your time, especially if they're convenient to you. Now, yes, newly logged areas, I might have to clarify, are good. Yeah, they're ones that were cut last year. Um, but they're not producing burn morels, Matt. They're producing Morchella snyderi, which are disturbance morels. It's a different species of morel that fruits up after a cutting than a burn morel, which is by the way, also it's a nice morel. They come out real clean. They're very tasty. They're fun to hunt. It's fun to hunt a logging area because you can walk through them easily. You're not getting, a lot of bugs and a lot of briars or poison oak or stuff like that as much. And you're finding really nice morels sometimes. And arguably, professional pickers will sometimes claim that they do as good or better in logged areas as they do in burns, and they get just as excited to hunt them. Uh, I think logging morels are super exciting because they can kind of let me scratch my itch earlier in the season. And we typically go in April looking for logging morels. And last year we went into, I think, the first week of May looking for them in Oregon before we switched gear into burn morels. Um, Yeah, and they definitely, John says they're disturbance morels. They like other things uh, uh, other than tree cutting. The problem is you want to go to a logged area because it's a massive area that's been cut, so you can park and you can walk for hours within an area. And usually in that area, by the way, you're the best spots in the log area are where the trucks roll through, or they're in like old tire tracks are often some of the best spots. We like to look for the kind of brush that's on the ground, creating moist areas. They're really fun. Eric asked if logging areas are typically public. Yes, Eric, I will tell you that on our map over here, if you go back and turned on the logging, those are all public. Those are in Forest Service. Many um, uh, timber companies will allow you to hunt in logged areas, and we have a special map to help you with that. If you know the timber companies, you can come in down here and you can go to public access and you can turn on property boundary ownerships and you can zoom in and you can find, for instance, it's gonna, I'll let it zoom in here, give it a minute. It's going to give me property lines. There they are. And you can kind of figure out which property lines are, this is United States. This is an example, Green Diamond. We hunted some Green Diamond last year. They charge $100 for an annual permit to hunt morels. Roseburg forests are free. Weyerhaeuser is, I don't think they really allow it, but you got to look it up. It depends on the unit you're trying to go into. So yes, all the ones on my map are in Forest Service. I don't map the timber company logging. They don't provide those maps, or I would. And the whether you can hunt those or not is dependent upon who owns it, and that's why I think this property ownership boundary can be really helpful for you to find those spots where you can and can't hunt. And you can get a big ticket if you're in a timberland in Oregon hunting illegally. All right. Yeah, and Laurel says in her experience, you usually have to use permits for private timber and logged areas. And again, Laurel probably kind of speaks to where you live and who's around you too. We're out here where we are. We're in Roseburg, a lot of Roseburg forest, and they don't care. There's no permit needed. It's all cool. That's predominantly what's around us. But as you go farther east, that's the Green Diamond, which requires a permit. So it kind of depends. But you got to go check it out. You got to go to their websites and kind of research them individually. All right, we get a little sidetracked here, don't we? I don't know how I won't be able to do this in 45 minutes if I keep doing that. Okay, but those are great questions. So I'm going to zoom out. I'm going to turn off this property ownership boundary. I'm going to come back out. Now, I want to talk about big picture here. Um, I'm going to go back one. I'm going to come over to wildfires. And right now, I have all the wildfires in the West turned on that I think are pretty good to hunt. I've also got these B-rated fires, which also are pretty good to hunt and worth your time. And I want to point out the difference between an A and a B fire, kind of to help you, is that the A fires, they have to be pretty big. They have to have great trees. They have to have public and accessible land to get the A rating. If they're not accessible or public to hunt on, if they're in a national park, if they're in a wilderness, if they're in a tribal zone or a private property, they don't get the A rating. If they're hard to get to because you got to walk a mile or three, they get a B rating. If you're a hiker, there's a lot of really good B areas you can hike into, and you'll have them to yourself. I do hear I don't want to say frequently, but regularly, people like talking about how they really like going to the bee type fires and hiking in and having a 150-acre burn all to themselves because people don't go to them. All right, if you want, you can drive down and show all the burns or all the states, or just you can pick a specific state if you want to zoom in on something. But I have all of them, and I have burns. If you want to look for burn morels in Virginia, I have those in here too. So I just don't rate those. We're not going to get into Eastern burn morels today. All right, so I shared my theory. Now I want to look at some big picture stuff. And to kind of go right to the point, I want to go down to precipitation and I want to turn on snow depth. And I will raise the opacity on that. That's how you kind of can make it come and go. So if it's in the way. And the first thing to note as you're kind of figuring out what's working or what's not for 2026 is, especially around you, you might want to go look at the fires that are still underneath snowpack. Um, this one is not underneath snowpack, but other ones are underneath snowpack. Let me do this. These are the small ones. Let me back out of here and come into wildfires and pick the A fires so we can see that a little better. And you'll see in here again now. So here's an interesting fire. This one has snow on it. So, in my opinion, it's buffered. The ground is still not exposed to the sun and has not started drying out. In fact, it's going to get wetter before it gets drier. And I'm really interested right now in that you look at those. And then if in your area, what you want to do is you want to look at ones that are maybe like this one, which are not underneath any any snow right now, and kind of wonder like these are going to be a problem right now if we don't get the right amount of rain. We're not going to be able to hunt this in 6 or 8 weeks. And even an area like this, if you click on it, and this is on Route 26, just east of Prineville. It's a lovely area. If you click on it, um, you can see the name of the fire, you can see the elevation range, and there's a lot of details underneath the advanced precipitation we're going to drive into later. And this one here is a poorly rated fire because there's no trees in it. I didn't rate it an A fire. But pay attention to that first and foremost. And you're going to see across the West, a lot of fires still have really a lot of snow in them. If you get into Idaho and Montana, you can zoom in here and you can see like this fire here must have a lot of snow on it. It's in the purple zone. It has 75 inches right here of snow. So that's pretty good. And I'm going to say, no problem. That's going to still take another 4 to 6 weeks to melt, probably. So we don't even have to worry about rain on that fire for a while. Um, so that's the snowpack map. Now, what I like to do is I put those maps. I'm going to go back one. I put these maps up into my favorites, snow depth right here, so I can more kind of quickly move between my favorites. And you'll see as I do that in a minute, kind of how I do that. So that's the snowpack. You're going to want to pay a lot of attention to this. And this is, well, let me back up and kind of give the overview. I'm first going to show you the 10,000-foot view, like big picture snowpack rain. And then we're going to go look at some specific fires and look at how you get the data for like a really specific spot versus a big map. And those are kind of two different exercises. So now I'm looking at the big picture. On the same vein, now we'll go back to precipitation. I'm just gonna turn off snow depth, and I have all these different uh, 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 periods that you can pick to look at the snow. And you might say, let's just look at the last 7 days, or I should say, look at the rain. Excuse me. We've got a lot of rain in here in the last 7 days. I think a lot of this was like today, and enough that it kind of clutters up the screen here. I'll zoom this down, but you might come down into California and note that this fire in here really didn't get much rain. This is blue. It got less probably than 1/10 of an inch, maybe up into some yellow areas, might have got 1/3 of an inch in the last week. Not a lot. I'm really looking for a 1/2 an inch to an inch, if we can get it, which is going to be the kind of orange into the red. So you can look at just the last week, what's happened. And you can see in here, like, oh, maybe Arizona could be promising. We'll see. They've got this red right here, and some yellow coming into these fires. Not a lot, but hey, that's just the last 7 days. You might care a little more about the last 15 to 30 days, and you can turn that one on. We'll turn that up, and that will show you a 2 week period, kind of 2 weeks before now, and you can see like some areas got no rain for 2 weeks. And I know it was hot, and there are going to be some problems, but other areas got a lot of rain. You see a lot in the blue and the red over here, and the dark blue and the red looks pretty promising. So these different kind of slices you can take of the rain will help you see the regularity. Now, there's a 30-day one too, which I think is interesting. There's a cool study out of Missouri that showed that the 30-day rain was most predictive factor for morels, which I thought was pretty interesting. Um, and I couldn't make sense of it in my mind for a while because it didn't ring true to me. Because I've seen it where you got rain 29 days ago and it really 30 days later, it's totally dry. And I think that's because in the West, where we hunt burn morels, not counting the coastal areas, but as you get on the east side of the Cascades and all the way east from there, we're in a pretty dry zone. And if it goes 4 weeks without rain, it's really dry. The ground at that point has really dried up. And I think that's when we start to really lose it. So I'm a little more concerned about looking at rain in 2 week chunks. I want to see a good rain every 2 weeks. And by a good rain, I'm going to say half an inch minimum. Um, and if we have at least a half an inch in each 2 week period, I feel like you'll be able to find some good morels. So if we get an inch of rain in those 2 week periods, I think you can find a lot of morels. Uh, 2 inches in a 30-day period is a fair bit of rain in most of these areas. And as long as if it's spread out a little bit, they will fruit. And I do think too, morels respond well to a giant rain. If you get a 2 inch rain, a giant dump somewhere on the map, and you can find that spot and get into it, maybe it's right here where they had this really, really heavy rain. Like that, not now, but if you saw this happen, on May 20th, you might be like, yes, this is the spot. This place is going to go crazy in the future. And that 2 week rain will will moisten up the ground and will last for a couple of weeks. Now, Eric asked how long between rain and fruiting. I don't look at it that way. I do want to see some rain in the 2 weeks before the fruiting, and I think that's sufficient. I don't know that like it rains and they pop. I think the sclerotia has already done its thing. It's ready to fruit when the soil temp gets to a certain temperature and then it fruits. If there's a really, really, really big rain, you can look at the soil temp and you'll see it drop. And that's going to probably slow everything down. Like a really big rain, I think slows everything down for a couple of days and then they'll fruit like crazy. Maybe, 4 or 5 a week, 10 days, 14 days later, you'll have massive amounts of mushrooms on the ground because then the soil temperature has come back up to the right temperature. I think we're gonna see a couple examples of these here in a minute when we dig into fire. So this is my precipitation maps. You can choose the layer that kind of works for you. On a related note, same kind of map concept. If you go into soil, there's two of them there. We have soil moisture, which will also help you time the winds and kind of know where they are. And we use this like last year. It was pretty dry. I see John is on the call. We hunted around with John last year. And looking at the west, we selected an area to go to. We hunted for like a week, and I think we hit. John may remember it. Did we hit six fires in 6 days? Something like that. And I think we got 70 pounds of mushrooms. We worked hard. I mean, they were there. We worked pretty hard and moved around and checked out a lot of fires, and a lot of the mushrooms came from, one or two of the fires. But we use a map like this and studied the rain, and we tried to dig into and go to areas that maybe like down here, you can see where it's red, where they got more rain. We followed where the rain was because it was pretty dry last, end of May across the West, just like the year before, by the way. So this is the soil moisture map. Um, and then we also have the soil temperature map, which will also help you find kind of some temperature gradients. And you can see the legend over here, and you can kind of look at where we are with the temperatures. As a mean temperature, I think it's got to be at least 50 for them to start. I feel like if you head out and start visiting areas that are at 50, you're probably too early still. I think they need to be at around 50 for a while, and I would guess that you're looking at an average temperature more like 55 when the fruiting starts in earnest. Now, every kind of area is different, and I think a lot depends other factors, but I do like to pay attention to the kind of overall soil temperature when I look at this. Um, yeah, and John said, yeah, we worked hard. We each got 60 pounds, but we only got a half inch of rain in the prior month and a half inch in the month before that. Um, and I think when we were hunting and going to all these fires, that was about the average, but I do feel like we must have found some areas that got a little bit more and they had a few more morels. But generally that was how it looked. Um, okay, so I'm going to turn that soil temperature off. So these are the big picture, kind of how you can evaluate the whole West. You can look at these things and decide where to go. And by the way, this also works for all kinds of other mushrooms. We use these precipitation maps and soil moisture maps. We've used them pretty extensively in the upper Midwest. We've used them in Colorado in the summers to kind of find the areas that get rain. And I think we learned in both Colorado and in the upper Midwest, specifically northern Wisconsin. Just like here in Oregon, um, often rain rolls through and there'll be bands of it and spots that get a lot more rain than someplace just nearby, and it can really pay off to study the map. And maybe you're going to go north 10 miles instead of south 10 miles, and you're going to get into an area that has, twice as much rain, and the mushrooms means they're going to be a lot happier there. Um, Dave Stetson asks, how far into soil do you take temperatures? Man, that's another big question. Um, the online maps break them down into 0 to 10 centimeters. They call that the topsoil, the first 10 centimeters. Um, I've noted when I stick my thermometer in the soil, the temperature I think it's unreliable to stick a thermometer in the soil. Many people that report what the soil temps they were at, I think just look at an online map and say, oh, the soil temp is 50. I looked on a map, that's what it said. Because when you take your thermometer out and poke it into the soil, morning and afternoon, totally different temperatures. So time of day matters. Or did it get sun all day? Radically changes the temperature. I mean, you're talking 10-degree swings on a sunny day. Is it north facing or south facing? Again, it's a sun issue. And then how far you stick it in. And what if you're just in a spot just on the south side of a tree where maybe it's getting, full sun, and on the north side of the tree that gets a lot more shade. It's a lot cooler right there. So I think soil temp really fluctuates. I have a meat thermometer with a probe about that long, and when I do it, I stick the probe all the way in the ground every time. I do it consistently the same depth. So at least from my own measurements, which again they fluctuate often from 47 to 57 when I'm finding them. Um, which is probably not also late afternoon. It's probably earlier in the day often. Um, I find big fluctuations, and I'll see them on the same fluctuation on the same day within 100 feet of each other. So this whole idea of soil temp, I think a lot of people talk about it, but I don't know how many people stick their thermometers in the soil and do it at a consistent depth and know the depth, and then kind of sample around and kind of get an average is really how you have to really do it. Um, Yeah, I mean the ideal temperature is, yeah, it's over 50 degrees, for sure. I would say on average when the first fruiting happens, and I don't mean like a rando, the first one popping up and you found 10 mushrooms in 2 hours that were the first ones. I mean when you go out and you fill your bucket. Because a big flush happened, I think it's probably closer to 55, if I had to guess. But it's that said, it's not, always that way. Um, Bobby asked about fire retardants. Oh, that's another good question. Just as an aside, we got a question about fire retardant. There's an article on our blog about fire retardant. It's a big topic. Um, Theoretically, fire retardants are not bad for you. Kristen, can you drop a link to that article in there? Um, the fire retardants aren't too big a deal. I mean, they're fertilizer. And they suck if you're a steelhead because they make algae grow in the water and they kill the andromenous fish. Now, the alarming thing is, even though they're just fertilizer, I think Montana is suing some of these companies because they did some tests and these companies that make the fertilizer weren't following the rules. They found some heavy metals in them last year, which is like not cool. But otherwise, they would just wash off. Not too big a thing to worry about. But that said, to answer your question, I think by the next week, I hope we'll have a map of fire retardant areas on our site. Um, Unfortunately, it's not where they sprayed it, but what I have discovered recently is the federal government has a map of areas where they're not allowed to drop retardant, and it's because of fish. So if you watch our site, you will see, I hope in the next week, I have it on my list. It's just kind of like one or two down. I'm going to add a map for fire retardant not allowed areas, and that's where you want to go if you really want to avoid fire retardants. And read that blog article, you can learn more about it. Read the comments too, because I've updated some information in the comments. All right. Um, so that's big picture. I think we're ready to kind of say those were all the big picture. Let's drive down and look and kind of look at some sample fires and talk about how to analyze them and what to see. And again, I think I have this caveat that while I want to talk about the season and how good it's going to be, it's too early yet. I think I should do this webinar again in a month, maybe when we can see the post snow melt weather and say, okay, here's where it's going to be good. We have these areas have the proper amounts of moisture and they haven't had extended dry spells. And these are going to be the areas you may want to check out. Of course, you can do that yourself too, using all these tools. But I'm going to show you how now. All right, so let's see. Let's pick a state here. Um, let's start with Arizona. Um, Arizona has big picture, fire wise, this is a really good year to go burn morel hunting. I think it's the a lot of people disagree with me. I think it's one of the best years we've had in a long time. And the reason I think it's best is because this year, if you look at the map, there's fires everywhere. In previous years, there were big areas that if you lived there, you weren't going to have a fire near you, like Colorado, New Mexico, Utah, Idaho, Montana. They all have good fires available. So no matter where you live, you have the opportunity to go to some nice A-rated burns and find some morels. Now, Oregon is not as good as it was last year, or I should say as bad, since the fires weren't as bad this year as the year before. Some states don't have as many opportunities, but across the board, there's a lot more diversity and opportunity, which I think is kind of cool. Because I think there's a lot of people in Colorado that want to go burn morel hunting. This is going to be a potentially a good year for them if it rains. Yeah, Eric, the soil temps on the map are, I think they're a mean. I think they're an average. I think they're a mean, but whatever. That's what that is. And I'm going to show you too, since you asked, he asked about it. I think this works right now. If you go in and turn on soil temp right now, I'm going to show you how to get more soil temp data. We'll turn that on. We're going to let that load, which I got to stop zooming so it'll load. And if you click on it, uh, let's just click right here, a random place. Let's see if it's on there. It will drop. And notice I clicked, I held it for like a half second to pop this box up. And you click on soil temperature, and it is, look, it's average 44.6 to answer your question, Eric. But it will tell you the depth, 5.6 centimeters. And then the temperature at each hour of the day. So, it fluctuated from 42. I'm going to go down 40, 40, not much fluctuation in this one. It's pretty cold. 47, it got as high as 48 at 1 p.m. So you can watch the temperature go up and down by the hour if you want by long clicking on the map. The letter ratings, if you want to see those, somebody asked, they're under wildfires, and you click in here and you can pick the rating like this, A, or you can show them all. But what you do is you zoom in, and all you do is you got to click on the red. That's where the details are. If you click on the red, that's where you get my comments. The bridge fire, it's relatively small, 223 acres, blah, blah, blah. I tell you about the fire, where to go in, I rate it, I have all the details. So it's not by clicking on just the fire, you gotta click on the red thing. the red fire icon to get all the details. David, I hope that helps you. All right. Okay, so I'm gonna go back. I'm gonna turn off. What do we have on right now? Is that's it's one. I have soil. I have layer on. So I'm gonna come in here. I'm gonna turn off soil temperature, and I'm gonna come into Arizona. First, I'm gonna come back and turn this back on. I'm gonna come into Arizona. I think this is a pretty cool fire. I don't know if it's gonna happen this year. Arizona is dreadfully dry, like so many places. But this is the. I'll click on it. This is the Dragon Bravo fire. That's that one that burned in the Grand Canyon and burned up that big resort. Not resort, it's the wrong word. The what do they call the facility it's not a resort, but the lodge in the Grand Canyon. Thank you, Kathleen. And but wonderful territory. It's so far away from everybody. It's vast. I would love to go pick this. It's my top fire personally that I want to pick because I want to pick in Arizona. And but the weather has to be right. And when it's right, oh my gosh, I think Arizona is awesome. Now, right off the bat, as you look at a fire like this, the first thing, and I talk about it. I talk about I like the name. Dragon Bravo. But the southern half is Grand Canyon National Park, and it's going to be a no-go zone for morel picking. I talk about that. But if you come in to public access in here and you turn on National Park, you can see where you're going to want to focus is not this red area. You're going to want to start looking in this area right here. And then you may I'm going to leave that on. I'm just going to turn her down just a little bit. And then after that, you might come in and look at um, under wildfires. You can turn on burn severity. I want to talk about burn severity. Look at that. Boom. You can see this purple. I'll show you the legend. Purple is high severity. Now, we don't normally find morels in high severity burns. And even in moderate, I get a little worried about. I'm looking for unburned, low, or moderate. Even unburned, it can be fabulous because that just means the fire ran through it. Now, we make this layer. We create this layer and we do it by taking a satellite imagery before and after the burn. And we use the infrared satellite, which will, I don't know, reflects off of tree leaves. And we then do math on it. I have an article on the blog about the math or what it's called. Um, and it shows us where the most severe burn is. The problem with the severe burn is that we don't find morels in them, and there's no trees, and we don't find morels. I think because there's no shade. And occasionally, in a severe burn, if there's enough precipitation, they will fruit like crazy. I mean, it's like 1 out of 10 times. John's here. Obviously, we hunt with John fairly regularly. We were with John in a burn in Montana, and we found awesome mushrooms in a severe burned area that we just happened to walk through. Normally, we didn't walk through it, and they were just beautiful. And oh, Jay Berger, he was there too. I think he's in this, um, and oh, they were beautiful morels. And I think it's just because they got enough rain. And I think if you go farther north into Canada and Alaska, that severe burn area is a popular place to hunt because they get enough moisture and it's cold enough that those areas don't dry out, so they fruit. The other thing, a severe burn can often be the first place that fruits because it's the temperature is quite a bit warmer, so you can get like some different mushrooms fruiting earlier in the severe burn. So they do have potential, but generally we avoid them. So I would look at this and go, oh, I want to pick, some of these less severe burns on this edge right here. And then I often I could leave that on and just turn it down. I'll turn on the morel probability. I'll turn that up. And all this green is really good. So you might just pick an area. I'm just going to pick one. I'm going to long click on it. It's 8,500 feet. That's very high in Arizona. I would prefer to pick above 8,000. I would probably, as a rule, pick above 7, and I would prefer above 8. Uh, I'm going to click Advanced Precipitation. And this is where you get a whole lot of information about that one spot. And I think you guys will like this. If you haven't seen this, for a mushroom hunter, this data is pretty sexy. Right here, it shows us April. They got a little bit of rain and snow today, just a little bit, the equivalent of 0.17 inches. If you click right here, you can look at last March. Oh my gosh, they got nothing. In fact, it was yesterday. They got 1/10 of an inch. Yikes. That's horrible, horrible. So they've had this huge dry spell with no snow, and that really worries me. I feel like from the this concept of sclerotia, like, man, they might not fruit here at all. It might be over. These might be dead vegetables in the garden. But they did just get some really nice precipitation, and there's more coming. Maybe this place will have some hope. I'm doubtful, but I'd like to keep my eye on it. Now, as we scroll down, so that's the day by day, the month by month. You can like back click into it. Now for this same spot, you can look at the past 12 months. They are 57% below average. And average is already pretty marginal in Arizona in these places. That's yikes. That sucks. So then I'm like, well, let's just look at this year. So far this year, just in the last 3 months, they're 80% below average. I mean, look at that. There's nothing coming in. I mean, that's pretty abysmal, and I would probably not make the trip to go and pick there based on that, unless they really just kept getting a lot of rain. And even then, I'd want to hear from somebody. So it's pretty tough. Not you wouldn't find any mushrooms, but this is going to be the microclimate people that go in and work. You can work hard, and you can find some. You're going to hunt around streams. You're going to find the shadiest spots. You're going to find that aren't very severely burned. You're going to find north facing, preferably on a stream, north facing at the bottoms of hills where anything that does run off runs down into the kind of bottom of a hill, and maybe you'll do pretty well, or maybe you'll get 4 or 5 there. This is the non-cumulative precipitation, which is the bar graph of the time period. Hourly, we're getting a little too detailed, a whole bunch more precipitation information. Oh my gosh, it's overwhelming. Air temp. Here's the soil temp fluctuating every day from, 74 down to 40. That's a crazy fluctuation. What is that? 34 degrees in one day? 36 to 73. That's crazy. I mean, I guess that's high desert, warm, sunny days, cold nights. The relative soil moisture started at 30 a month ago, and it's dropped. It made it almost down to 20, and then boom, it's jumped up to a really healthy 50%. I feel like when the soil moisture goes from 30 down to 20, like it's about to end. Like that line right there almost would mean it's over. I do feel like things happen between 30 and 20 in a lot of these dry spots. Now, this chart is new. We've only had it in here for a couple of weeks, and I haven't done enough analysis on it. I hope in the next couple of weeks to go in, and I want to put in a lot of my old finds and look at the precipitation, because the next feature we're adding, which will be out in like definitely a week or two, is you can upload a picture in here, a historical picture, and get all the data from like 3 years ago, 4 years ago, 5 years ago. So if you're like, hey, we had a really good year in 2020 at this one spot in California. What was the weather like then? You can just upload the picture and get the full weather report with all this data for then. I think it's going to be great. I'm really looking forward to doing that. So I want to do the historical analysis on that. And I would offer to any of you, if you want to get involved, I would love to find some people that have really good burn morel hunting days that have some photos of where they found them in years past that can share the location and the date. And then I can run these reports, and maybe we'll be able to say, hey, here's kind of on average what they're looking for. So if any of you want to get involved in that, let me know. I'm hoping to start that data soon. Would the photo need to have yes, Tim, totally. It needs to have the GPS in it. Otherwise it wouldn't know where it is. But in our app, when you upload a photo, if it has the GPS in it, it will geolocate it right on the map for you. So all you got to do is upload the photo, and then you'll be able to hit that button and get all the data from the photo. All right. And that's imminent. That's in fact, last week's webinar I showed everybody the tool. It was in our beta version, and we went through and used it, and that's pretty cool. So they had a big jump in soil moisture with this rain. Now the temperature also came down. Look at the temperature. The temperatures have dropped with that rain and probably that lack of sun. And in fact, it was more than rain. There was that inch of snow. The current snow depth is right here. So I like to look at this. I often look at this chart. It's down at the bottom. You'll see I always scroll down to look at this particular chart for that particular spot. Um, yes, thank you, Kristen. All the data in here is private. Nobody's going to see what you upload. So if you want to participate and like what I want to do, you have to like send me the picture so I can upload it and I can look at it. Like you can upload whatever you want. It's not gonna, it's just on your account. Okay, so cool, right? So we look at this and I'm kind of like, not a good for not kind of a good scene here. I'm not optimistic. So let me go turn this public access layer off. Um, um, and I already showed you the property ownership boundary that we use in here, which is awesome to show the lines of who owns what and exactly where. But you can slice and dice all the land into all types of different public access. This top one, public access, it's a little slow. Sometimes some days it's a little slow. And it will light up everything with either what do these colors mean? Green is open access. We have restricted access and closed access. And then if you click on it, I think it's still loading. It will tell you what this is. This is an open access area. It's Grand Canyon National Park, though, so you still can't pick there. But it will tell you whether you're allowed to be there or not, and kind of what the status is. So this one has all the information in it, but I don't often use it because it's slow. Often I'm just trying to get the Forest Service, the wilderness, and I made these maps and made them colorful, and they load real fast, and they also work on our offline version. So when you're in the field, you can download these, and you can have the designations right on your phone or on your phone app. All right. So let's go look at another state. That was Arizona. Let's jump up north to Utah. Utah has a couple of first-rate burns this year. People don't talk about Utah a lot, but they have pretty good forests there for morels. Um, there's like, this fire right here, I've still got the Morel probability map on it, which shows a lot of green and yellow, which is good. The Morel probability map is going to be based on the slope, the aspect, the tree cover percentage, the elevation, to kind of predict where the morels are going to be. But what I want to do though is I want to turn on, go back. I want to turn on the snow depth real quick. I just want to see like, okay, so there's some snow in these high elevation areas here. Even though Utah is bone dry too, they do have some snow going on right here. And these are the areas we probably want to hunt anyway. So as I look at this, I'm sorry about the barking. I'll click on there and hit advanced precipitation, and we'll be able to see kind of what it looked like. They got a little bit of snow yesterday. But again, they had this whole month with nothing in March. And they only had 5 inches in February. So they have not had much precipitation in here. And so you're not going to get much buffering. Here's the cumulative precipitation. It looks pretty tough here too. It looked a lot like that Arizona, which, not surprising. We only just went north a little bit. Nothing this year. We'll scroll down. Now, I will say I'm going to scroll down to soil. There's soil temp. It's a lot cooler here, though. It is an even higher elevation. Um, Here's the soil moisture dropping, 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 and then coming back up just recently. But it went all the way down below 20%, which is pretty low. I tend to not trust the soil moisture and the soil temperature when there's snow on top of it. I don't feel like these data models do good when there's snow on top of it with those two measurements. So I don't hang too big a hat on either of those. If there's snow, I'm not really too concerned about it. I'm going to want to see what it looks like when the snow melts. But look at this. Here's the snow depth. So as bad as that looks compared to the Dragon Fire, Dragon Bravo, sorry, Bravo Dragon. They had 14 inches of snow on this two weeks ago, and it went all the way down to about an inch, and now it's back up to 8 inches. So this area is still buffered, and in my opinion, depending on what happens in the next 2 or 3 months, it could be good. Now it's Utah, it's a high elevation. I mean, you're talking, June probably before, and even July before this region would really take off. And if there's snow, if there's like monsoons that roll through here, it will pick well into August. How does elevation affect morel growth? It doesn't affect morel growth, in as much as it affects the wind of when the morels grow. So it affects, the higher the elevation, the colder the temps, the longer the snow holds, the later they fruit. It can impact the morels that you see also by the tree types, that you have up there or don't have. So I think we'll try to talk a little bit about trees, but trees are a little tougher topic. So no, it's just I think elevation is a factor in the temperature, is all it is. All right. Let's see. Let me close out of that. And while we'll just stay down here in the Southwest, maybe we'll bop over to Colorado. They've got, a couple of, like, there's a fire over here in the Uncompahgre, which is such a neat area. I wish this were better here. This would be a fun one to go, but it doesn't look very promising. And it's in that same Southwest zone. I'm not going to go look at how much snow they have, but look at this one, maybe down by Telluride. This one's got some snow happening on it. I'm going to click on it. Let's read about it. Oh, Stoner Mesa. Kara just asked about that. It's a large burn. It's northwest facing. I put that in there because I like that, especially in Colorado. I love north facing. Colorado gets really beat up by the sun, much like Utah and Arizona, and the habitats on north facing slopes are remarkably different. And you can see that when you're in Colorado, if you're standing in a canyon or whatever, and you got north facing and south facing, the trees are totally different on the two types of slopes. Um, and it's let's see, the elevation range is 8 to 11, so it's got a big range, which theoretically 8,000 is going to start Memorial Day, and 11,000 is going to take you into September if it rains. Oh, and that's kind of what I said right here. Um, you can read about it. But let's just click in. I assume over here as we go, the higher elevations over here. I'm going to just click in here. That's at 9,500 feet where I clicked. You can see there's only 1 inch of snow, which is crazy. That's such a small amount of snow for 9,500 feet. I'm going to scroll right down and look at the snow. But you can see that it has been covered in snow up there. It made it down briefly, it melted, and then it came back. So I feel like it holds some promise. The soil moisture, again, I don't thoroughly trust because it's under snow, but I'll want to watch this, and I'm excited that at least it's back up higher again. Same thing with the soil temp. Again, I'm going to take those with a grain of salt since they're under snow right now. But in a month, I'll pay a lot more attention to those. And same precipitation issues as we had in down there. I'm kind of getting tired. These charts all look the same in this part of the country, don't they? But I don't think it's over because they're under snow. All right, let's pop up now. Let's pop up to Wyoming. Let me just see if I had any other um, notes in there. Wyoming, this one caught my eye. I was looking on the maps in here, and as I zoomed around, here's a nice looking fire. This one is called Dollar Lake. It's 30 miles squared. It's got great forest. It's got easy terrain. It's mostly north facing. It's got a road running along it. I mean, that's all pretty cool. 7,800 to 10,600. It's a really nice elevation range. Um, I'm gonna go back and uh, I'm just gonna lower this a little bit. Because what I want to do, and I should have done that right here under favorites, I could have just come on here and done it right here. And then I can raise up the burn severity and see if we have it for this fire. I don't have burn severity for every fire because the ones that happen late in the season, there's no before and after satellite imagery available. It snowed or something before we're able to get the after imagery. So unfortunately, there is no burn severity for this fire. But let's look at the morel probability so you can see the kind of sweet zones. That's a lot of yellow. And I'll click right here. and we'll take a look at it. 25 inches of snow. That's awesome. It should be 4 times that, but it's still pretty awesome. I'll hit advanced precipitation, and I think we're going to have more good news. We're coming farther north. I think the news is getting better. Let's look at March. I got 4 inches of snow in March. Nothing to write home about, but gosh, a lot better than farther south. The gap now it's 33% below average instead of 80%. If I look at 2026, now they've had a pretty bad spring though, or winter. It's 78% below average. And by the way, it's in our Modern Forager blog from years ago. I did a bunch of analysis on kind of summer and fall mushrooms too, that we were finding in Colorado. What I discovered was uh, average precipitation is awesome. Things fruit in average precipitation. I'm going to scroll down here. You can see the snow has just been holding steady right there, 30 to 25 inches. I think this is a nice looking spot. And I think if you're in this part of the country, you got something to look forward to. All right. Let's see. That was Wyoming. Now we're gonna come. Most of you are farther west, so let's start heading west and take a look at that. We got a lot of good fires in Idaho and Montana. This part in Northeast Washington does not look very good to me. However, Northeast Washington is kind of um, feels a little coastal or a little PNWE. It is normally it's a different type of forest up here than when you head south. That said, this still does not look very good. You can investigate those, but as you come down in here, there's a lot of fires that are sitting on snowpack. I was going to look at this fire because it's kind of close to Boise. Now there's a big square around this. That's because we have this save offline feature, and I have that open right here. You can open this up and you can turn it on and off. So this area I've saved to my offline version, so it works when I'm in the field and there's no cell phone signal. And you can see where you've saved things that way. So I'm going to turn that off. We don't need to see that. Um, Tim Bessie is saying, does elevation itself have a direct effect? And again, no, I do not think elevation has an effect, other than the timing of the season and the type of trees you'll find. So in Colorado, if you're at 7,000 or 8,000 feet in the western slope, you're not going to find Engelmann spruce. You're not going to find subalpine fir. You're probably going to be finding lodgepole, and you're probably going to be finding like scrub oak and deciduous trees, and it's you want to get a little higher in elevation where you get those nice firs and spruces that at least in that part of the country the mushrooms really love. Now, in some elevation areas, you might find ponderosas, which morels will fruit under. I'm going to talk about trees in a little bit though, at least cover them a little bit. Now, let's take a look at this one. Yeah, this is fun. You can see here, this is right next to that Tamarack ski area. I've never been there. But my first worry was whether it was public or not. But I turned on the public maps, I turned on the access maps and the Forest Service maps. And it's interesting, this area right on this line, it's pretty much in public. So you can get up and hunt this according to what I'm able to see in the maps. Um, and you can see here, this is an east-facing slope running up the hill. I got a real nice yellow spot right here, which means there's a lot of trees. It's not too steep. It's not south-facing. And it has 11 and a half inches of snow on it, which is pretty poor, but better than zero. Better than Dragon Bravo. They got a little bit of snow today. Let's see what they got in. And they got, more than we've seen. This is the biggest number we've seen yet as we've headed north out of the southwest. So things are looking better as you head north. I'm going to scroll all the way down and look at the snowpack. You can see it's pretty steady snowpack, so I'm going to not pay too much attention to the soil moisture yet, or the soil temps. Soil temps are a moot point if there's snow on it. No else are going to fruit. I don't think we've really ever found, how should I say? We have occasionally worked hard and found some morels, burr morels, with inside of a snowbank. But typically there's no snow, where we find a morel. There's like, you can't look around and go, oh, there's a snowbank over there. It hasn't melted yet. Usually the snow's all gone by the time we're finding burn morels anyway. So I'm not talking about natural, it's just burn morels. So again, I think it's moot while there's snow in the area. All right, so that fire looks pretty good. And I think really indeed a lot of the fires in this area look pretty promising. Now, if you're in a place and you're thinking about hunting this year, what you might want to do is kind of study the fires that look good right now and kind of keep your list of like, hey, these are the three or four I want to watch, and then you can visit them in a month as they get a little closer to their dates. Now, as you go down from Washington down to California, typically California fruits first, and then it heads north into Washington. Although that said, I don't think the timing is very big. I'm going to come down here now to California. This fire way down here in the south is a kind of a lonely fire near Fresno. There's a bunch of fires in Northern California. Now these are pretty coastal and into Southern Oregon. I'm going to come down and look at this fire. I think it's a really good one. Um, what do I have? I don't have the Morel probability right now. There's a lot of green and light green in here, which looks promising. Wonder if we get burn severity for this one. I don't know if we do. I don't think we do. That was another late one. It's funny, I got it for this little tidbit right here though, but not for the big one. And then zoom in and you can see there's very little snow left on this burn. But if you zoom it down a little bit, this is a really nice plateau up here. And I'm pretty sure if we turn back if we ramp back up our Morel probability, that area is probably pretty good. So let's just click on there. Let's see what we got. It's 5,000 feet, which in California is pretty high in elevation. 2.4 inches of snow, so it's got a little something. It's a 95 square mile fire. It's a giant one. Let's go take a look. Uh, they didn't get any today. As we go north, we're going to see a lot more rain happening today, by the way. They got hardly anything in March, nothing, hardly any. Oh, no, they got 63 inches of snow in February. So in the third week of February, they got a pretty big blanket of snow. I think we're going to scroll down here and see. Yeah. So it only melted around March 24th. Now, this is an interesting cycle. I like this a lot. They had several feet of snow, let's say. We can't see exactly, but at least 2 feet. And it melted March 24th. And then a week later, it got precipitation. So the soil moisture should hold pretty good and then kind of be rejuvenated right here. You can see as that came in on that soil moisture. So I feel like this fire is queued up. It had enough snow to buffer it out. It melted, and now it got some rain. And I think if we watch the rain on this fire, this could really produce. It is in kind of mid California, so it's going to go off earlier than everything farther to the north. 5,000 feet is a high elevation in California, but it's not that high. So I'll bet this one is, probably I would want to be in here in, 6 weeks. There'll be people in 4 weeks, maybe finding some if it continues, if the weather patterns are right. But I would guess by what is 6 weeks from now? May 15th. This could be totally going off by then if the weather holds. So it looks good. I like this one. Uh, for you. I know there's a lot of you in this area too. This is like a pretty cool fire. It's got a lot of access. Now we do have some fun access maps. Let me just zoom down here. These maps they're a little slow. I'll apologize. Oh, of course, as soon as I say that, they're going to come in super fast. Um, these come from Forest Service servers, so they're a little slow because they're government servers. I don't have these on my server. I got to go kind of call the information. But these are going to show you. I'm going to ramp that one down. These are hiking trails. These black ones. And then if you turn back on the motor vehicle routes, it will show you the places that you can drive your vehicles in. I don't have this for everywhere. Each Forest Service produces its own motor vehicle routes, but they are supposed to update these every year. And this motor vehicle route is, in my opinion, if it's available, is going to be the most accurate and kind of up to date. Um, as opposed to if you come up to your base map and you pick, Google, you're going to have a lot of old roads in there. Um, I prefer Mapbox Outdoor for my just everyday finding some roads on here. Um, and you can't see them; they're hidden underneath these roads, I think, so you can't see the Mapbox Outdoor roads. I really like this CalTopo map. We'll let that come back. The CalTopo map, it has really nice road data, all the numbers, the names. It's pretty nice. Um, all these roads. The problem is if we come back and now we got to kind of bring this back. Um, you'll see the CalTopo has a lot of roads that are not on this. Now, see, this is an example. See, it's a little slow right now. Um, it, it, it has a lot of roads on it that are not on the motor vehicle routes. And usually if they're on here, but not in motor vehicle routes, they're closed, usually. All right. So let me go back to using this just as my nice base map with all the data on it. You can see it has roads in it. Zoom back in. You're gonna zoom in and find roads. They're gonna have the numbers. You can see them on here as well. But pretty promising fire with some cool stuff going on in it. Now I want to go a little further north. Let me just turn this one off. I want to go a little further north and look up here in the northwest corner. Those of you in California or Southern Oregon, pay attention to this. Um, there's this thing called serpentine soils that happen in this area. And I have those underneath soil. And this is a special map that I added, and it's in the blue. And the thing with serpentine soil is morels do not like it. I do not think you're going to find morels anywhere where there's blue. And you'll notice when you're looking at the land, it looks different. Like it's not very lush. The serpentine soil is, I don't know, it doesn't have the same water holding or nutritional value or something that it doesn't have the same trees, the same plants. It has unique trees and plants. I'm not a geologist, so I can't explain it, what it is. But you're going to want to pay attention to these. Now, these are coastal burns, and I would call these coastal burns. I don't get as excited about hunting this range here, but people go crazy in them and find them. I think this area is also really good for logging morels all the way over here into where's Mount Hood? There's Mount Shasta, excuse me. There's Mount Shasta. You've got this area down here, which I would not go to, but this area or over on the east side of Mount Shasta, I would think would look more promising and is well known for mushroom greatness. A lot of people head there around Memorial Day weekend. All right, so that was just to show off the serpentine soils for these. Watch out because you can drive into a dead zone and you don't want to bother. All right, turn that off. Now up here in Eugene in Oregon, we've got kind of a spread of fires. Um, uh, Let's pick this one. It's kind of fun. It's outside of Eugene. This is the Immigrant Fire. John, I think John, you were checking it out recently. It's still a little early here, but let me back up and we can turn on the. Let me just click on it so you can get the data. It's a 52 mile square fire. It's going to be the most visited burns in the West, according to what I think. Um, the average slope is 22 degrees, meaning it's mostly walkable, but it's a little steep. It's not the easiest burn to walk. Usually we want to watch out for once you get to 15 or 20 degrees, it gets a little steep, and 30 is unwalkable. And we do have in here under topo tools, we have lots of elevation finders to help you find specific elevations. We also have a slope visualizer, which will help you visualize the areas that are too steep. And that's going to be down here, this orange and brown. and you want to find the yellow and this orange in between is kind of middle. So there's a lot of steep stuff in here. And as you look, you might want to be focusing on some of these less steep areas because they're tough. Now, if I pop in here and turn on my Morel probability map, I think you'll see a similar layout here, and that's because of my Morel probability map. I lower the score if it's really too steep to walk on. So don't let that fool you. There could be plenty of morels. I don't think morels mind steep territory, but humans don't like them. So I artificially lower the scores of places that are too steep. And if they are really steep, I lower it down to 0. So that's why there's some unique areas in here you're going to want to check out. And fires like this, usually you drive around and you got kind of got to eyeball and find the places you're really comfortable walking in. Now this might be a fun one to talk a little bit about trees. What trees are good. I think morels are kind of local eaters. They favor certain types of trees depending where you're at. I think burn morels are don't mind. They like most conifer trees. My experience is that like a mixed conifer forest is the best. I love finding grand fir. I love Engelmann spruce. I love subalpine fir. I love white fir. I love all the firs and the spruces. But we've done really well in lodgepole or lodgepole pine and that's well known, especially for those late fruiting tomentosa burn morels. We've done really well around ponderosa trees. They can produce. I don't feel like they do as well for me, but some people swear by both those. The one tree that out in this neck of the woods people really love is the cedar tree. So, and the favorites. Now, let me go back. I have those under trees. So, I've got all these different types of trees. You can get the individual ranges for these different types of trees if you want to see where they exist. I also have a forest type map. I'm going to start with that. And I think this is important for those of you planning your year. What you've got here is a lot of this Doug fir forest group. That's what this brown is. It's hard to see because it's on top of the pink of the fire, but that's that brown. There it is. That's that brown Doug fir right there. That's great. I really like this pinkish. Where is it here? Da, da, da. Fir, spruce, mountain hemlock group. I really like to hunt that. I really like to see, and let me zoom out. You can see here like all the Doug fir forest. And this is just, they take the whole country and divide it into 28 forest types based on the dominant tree. There's all kinds of trees in here, but this is a dominant Doug fir zone, a dominant spruce fir zone. And I love the spruce fir zone. Personally, I think it's like my favorite, and I really like seeing where they kind of like come into the Doug fir, and I feel like those are great places to hunt, and I really like seeing how they come into this fire. So I pay a lot of attention to this map, kind of big picture, 1,000 feet view. Um, I should have not done that yet. Let me turn that off. But you can come in and you can, I saved some of these in my favorites down here. So I'm going to come in and I'm going to go to, let me close that back. Let me go back. Let me go to my favorites. Let me turn down the Morel probabilities so it's not doing too much on the map here and show you that I think this is like a fun area to show this. It has all these types of trees. Like we know it has Doug fir, a lot of it, especially on this left western edge here. But the Doug fir kind of fades as you head east and clearly like certain elevations. Oops, that's the wrong. I'm going to turn that off. We might have some white fir starting to come in. Um, Around that, which is another wonderful tree, your Engelmann spruce. That's a little harder to see because it's that blue on this particular map, but there's the Engelmann spruce kind of coming up these valleys here. We can look at ponderosa and see some ponderosa hot spots in here. Lodgepole pine is going to be in here. So the one though that people out in Oregon love this Western red cedar. And there it is. It kind of maps out well with the Doug fir. The Western red cedar is often mixed in with the Doug firs. And I would guess for people that hunt in this part of Oregon, it's probably the most talked about tree to find big clusters of morels. And some hunters in this area will just go from reds, and I've done this. You walk through the woods, you're like, oh, there's a red cedar. I'm going over there. Oh, there's another one. Let's go over there. And you can follow the trees around. And as you hunt morels, sperm morels, in whatever forest you're in, start paying attention. Like maybe they're bunching around certain types of trees, and you might start looking for that tree in the forest as you walk around. Now they might be widespread too. And that's also why it's dangerous. Like everybody like tells you, like, oh, this tree is the best, and you're like, wait a minute, what state are you in? Like people are like, oh, the elm trees. Like you talk about morels, there's all this stuff, in big magazines. Go hunt morels under elm trees. They're like, there's no elm trees out west. No, we want white firs, or we want white oaks, or white Oregon oaks, or whatever it is. Um, you kind of got to know your local tree, and you want to start paying attention to trees. And there's no easy answer other than mixed conifer is always good. A little bit of everything mixed in there. Yeah, Becky, yeah, the moisture, I don't think it's because of the moisture those trees hold. I think you reversed it, Becky. I think it's because those trees grow where there's a certain amount of moisture, if that makes sense. By the way, grand fir is another one. I love the grand firs. Now, there can be other factors around trees, including elevation and longitude and latitude. But I do believe that a lot of the trees are indicators of how much moisture is in the ground. It can also be indicative by the soil type. But um, they 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 do help you understand moisture levels. When you get to ponderosas and lodgepoles, there's less moisture than where you're going to find the firs. And the spruces usually indicate more moisture, which is why you also find those in drier areas. You find the firs and spruces at slightly higher elevations and on north-facing slopes. And those are two really good things to find morels with as well in these drier zones. So I think that's what trees indicate, that they're indicators of the moisture. Now, do the morels like them more? I don't know. Maybe they just like the same place the trees like, it's happenstance. Um, I hope that helps. All right. So that's I did a little tree talk. Kind of showed you how to look at that. Let me go turn a few trees off. What do I have on in here? I have Western red cedar. I'm going to turn that one off. And I think we're kind of wrapping up. I've been talking for a long time. I do think we should probably
Jordan
wrap
has a
up.
good question there.
There's a question in there.
Chat.
What's the best indicator of when to hunt this immigrant fire? Okay, Jordan, good question. Soil temp. Yeah, man. Here's my answer. Number one is you can watch Facebook in the area and watch for people sharing pictures. People can't help. They might not tell you where it is, but that's often one good way. Look at their pictures. Are they in a burned area where there's a picture of the mushrooms? Do the mushrooms look like they're burned morels? When they take their picture, are their hands dirty and faces dirty? And do their clothes have black on them? Things like that. They're probably in this fire. But I think you want to look for the average soil temperature getting 50 degrees and above. Um, I don't think it's far off. I think spring is coming early. This fire is going to probably start at the lower elevation ranges in a couple of weeks, but there are some good elevation ranges, so it should go longer. Um, oh, man, Jordan, the best indicators for you kind of got to go. And you gotta, if you're really into doing it, you kind of gotta go once a week and find some lines to walk that give you a good selection of elevations and aspects, and like cover a lot of territory. When we hunt burn morels, we walk fast. We don't work hard. Like I don't want to walk in one area all day and look hard. I want to get out of my car. I want to blast through. I want to get some elevation. I want to come back to the car. I want to go to the next spot. I want to walk fast. So you kind of got to keep your eye on it and go once every week or two and kind of get that sense. And then once it starts, it should go for a month once it starts. If not longer, even in one spot, there's going to be multiple flushes and they'll keep coming back. on that. So, and check the soil temps. I think you're going to see them, above 50 on average, for sure. Um, Soil temps for logging morels, I think is in the high 40s. Gosh, when we pick logging morels, it always feels kind of cold.
Very.
Yeah. I'm gonna say high 40s for logging morels, but I don't have a right answer for that. I just know they're several weeks before burn morels. And they're starting now in the warmer areas and around the state. I also think morels like dry areas. We kind of get caught up in precipitation, and they like moisture, but it seems like they really like to be in a place they're stressed out. Like if you're they really enjoy um, all these places in the West that are typically pretty dry and pretty droughty, and maybe the forest canopy is not like a rainforest. Um, and somehow this moisture that comes into these dry areas really excites them, and they can fruit magnificently, which is why as you head over the onto the western side of the Cascades and you look at these tree types and these tree maps, oh no, not do that, let me do forest type, which indicate dryness, why, I'm going to zoom out a little bit, why these areas down through here where we leave the Doug fir zone and get into the Engelmann spruce and then the ponderosas can be so productive. Um, Now they do well in other areas too, but I don't think they're scared of being dried and stressed and getting some rain in those dry areas. Morels in the ditch is when you're driving around, I think, and you find them. I know when we're scouting morels, we are like, okay, guys, we're gonna park right here. We'll meet back in the car in 20 minutes. Don't be late. And we just hit areas and move on and hit areas and when we're trying to figure out what the pattern is. And it's okay if there's commercial pickers around and they're picking. If you're seeing stumps where they picked and you're seeing the signs they're picking, like they're walking around with baskets of mushrooms, you see other people carrying mushrooms, that's okay. You're still going to find them. The woods are huge. I feel like every time there's a big flush and we're behind the commercial pickers, we still get gallons of mushrooms. Like they move so fast and leave so many behind. There's still a lot of opportunity, and wait a couple days and there'll be more. So yeah, we love finding the morels from the car window. It's kind of a game. Um, yeah. All right. So I didn't get too much into Washington, but it's kind of more of the same, I think. If we don't have any more questions in here, we probably should wrap it up. I'm just going to look at my notes and see if I kind of covered everything I wanted to cover. I did want to, let me turn this off. I did want to just point out, those of you that are in here, a couple of key things are that people miss is the long click is what pops up. Clicking on the fire is where you get the good fire data. Over here under this icon right here that looks like a Wi-Fi signal is where all your offline map management is. And you can save offline maps and manage your offline maps and see them. You can just click this button and you will go offline. And that's kind of handy. We do that when we have one bar in the woods and we don't want it to be like working to pull data when there's really a poor cell phone signal because it just like takes forever. So we just turn it off and we use our offline map that we have pre-downloaded because it's more convenient. And then under the plus sign, you can drop a marker or a pin anywhere you want on the map. When you click it, it will do it in the middle of your screen or your location. If you want it in a specific spot, like right in Great Falls, just click there and click add a marker here. You can also take a photo and drop it in and it becomes a marker. You can take it live right there, or you can pull it out of your iPhone. You can manage all your markers right here in the folder view. Oh, no, that's the wrong folder. That's where you create folders. This folder will allow you to manage your folders, your markers, your categories, and your tracks. So you can kind of manage all the things you save. And then finally, we got a nice search feature. This is handy. If you don't know this, if you get a long lat, you can drop it in here and find it. So here's an example. Maybe somebody sent you one, Or maybe here you can copy this long lat right here if you want to share with somebody. But if you get one, you come in here and you drop the long lat in here and search it, and it will find it, and you can click on it and you can go to it, and there you are. So that search is kind of handy for finding things, especially coordinates. All right, that's it. We've gone through it. We've looked at it all. In 2 weeks, we'll be doing another one for the subscribers. But I'm gonna probably do one of these once every week. I'll be doing a beginner's burn morel one. I'll be doing one like this. Like let's look at the season again and see where we are, and we'll run through the West and talk about what's good. So I hope you guys enjoyed yourselves. It was fun to have you on here. Um, uh, I think we're I think we're ready to wrap. There's no more questions. Yep. Thank you guys. Thank you, Tim. Thank you, John. Appreciate having you on here too, John. Thank you, Kathleen and Stacy. It's been good. So we'll see you guys all later. Bye bye.